Welcome, friends, to this Dhammadharini Sutta study group. Today, we are looking at the Vijaya Sutta, which is trying to be live streamed on YouTube, and I'm just checking to make sure whether that's happening or not, because the computers are not cooperating. Yes. Okay. Dear friends, I'm not getting better. Sorry, but my heart is as good as ever. We're looking at the Vijaya Sutta, which I referenced to last Tuesday evening in our regular Dhamma program. We spoke about it briefly. I want to go a little bit more in depth with this by telling you the background story and making some comparisons between the way that that this contemplation is presented here in the Sutta Nipata and the way it's presented in the Mahasatipatthana Sutta. So it's the same themes, but a little bit of a different kind of an emphasis. After I read you the background story, I think I may call on my friend at the Aranya Bodhi Hermitage, who is visible on this screen here, to read off the sutta, to give me a little bit of a break from speaking. So this discourse has two different background stories, or it was taught on two different occasions, and the two occasions are related to the background stories for two different verses in the Dhammapada. The first story is about Nanda, who was a beautiful young woman at Kapilavatthu. Shortly after the Buddha had gone forth, he returned from his training of his disciples and visited his hometown of Kapilavatthu, where he gave the ordination to his cousin Nanda and to many others. It says in this commentary, he allowed women to go forth. This is quite interesting, and I hope that a better scholar than me can explain it, because the Buddha's initial visit to Kapilavatthu was 1 year after his enlightenment. And the establishing of the bhikkhuni ordination was said to be 5 years after the Buddha's enlightenment, or 5 years after the establishment of the Bhikkhu Sangha. So the going forth could refer to the pabbaja, or the novice ordination, but at the very beginning, I don't believe there was the same distinction made between the going forth and the upasampada, or the full ordination. So it's quite unclear to me whether this commentary is just sort of like generalizing without being that clear about the exact dates when this happened, or if this is a passage that raises a question about the chronology of the ordination of women. In any case, there were 3 women named Nanda who went forth. Nanda has a delightful, pleasant kind of meaning. There's Nanda, who is the sister of the Bhikkhu Nanda, and then Abhirupananda, who was the daughter of King Kamaka. Rupa is the form, and Abhirupa she had a really great form. So, very beautiful. And another one called Janapata Kalyani Nanda. So these 3 beautiful, playful girls, young women, were peerless in beauty, and they were all infatuated with their beauty. They didn't really want to go and listen to a sermon by the Buddha. They didn't even want to see him. They thought, the Blessed One speaks dispraise of form, criticizes it, and in many ways shows the danger in form. So why did they go forth? Well, they had no alternative. On her wedding day, Abhirupananda's husband, a Sakyan youth, died, and her mother and father made her go forth against her will. Then the one who was the sister of Nanda, when Venerable Nanda attained arahantship, then Janapati Kalyani Nanda lost hope and thought, my husband, mother, and Mahapajapati, as well as other relatives, have gone forth. Without these relatives, the household life is suffering. So she also went forth, not from faith, but she couldn't find any enjoyment in the household life. The Buddha was keeping an eye on them, and when he saw that they would be ready to understand some of the teachings, he instructed Mahapajapati and said, let all the bhikkhunis come in sequence for an exhortation. But when their turn came, these 3 bhikkhunis named Nanda sent a proxy. Then the Blessed One said, when one's turn arrives, one should come oneself. One should not send a proxy. So finally they came. And in particular now, it's referring to Abhirupananda. And then the Blessed One aroused a sense of urgency in her by creating a mind-created form while he was teaching. And it was Gata 150 in the Dhammapada verse. Behold, Nanda, this assemblage, afflicted, impure, putrid, flowing and oozing, delighted in by fools, develop the markless state, discard the latent tendency to conceit. Then, breaking through conceit, you will live at peace. What he did, he created the appearance of in place of having his regular attendant, he had a mirage of a beautiful 16-year-old girl. The Bhikkhuni Ananda, the Bhikkhuni Nanda saw the Buddha, saw a beautiful form, and heard his beautiful mellow voice, and then was astonished to see this beautiful 16-year-old fanning the Buddha. She thought, "Oh, this woman is truly beautiful," and was entranced. Then the Buddha caused the woman's beauty to decline. She became like a 20-year-old woman, and then she became like a woman who's already given birth, then like a middle-aged woman, then like an old woman, then getting older and older until she was 100 years old, bent and leaning on a walking stick with pockmarked limbs. And then while Nanda was still looking on, the Buddha showed this figure to die. Her body became bloated and went through the stages of decay, surrounded by crows and scavengers, being devoured. Having seen that sequence of decay, Nanda thought, this sequence is common to all, to me as well as to others. The perception of impermanence sprang up in her. In conformity with it, the perception of suffering and non-self arose. These three kinds of existence then appeared to her like a blazing house, not offering any refuge. Knowing that Nanda's mind had settled on a meditation subject, the Blessed One gave this verse to her. Behold, Nanda, this assemblage, afflicted, impure, putrid, flowing and oozing, delighted in by fools, as this, so that, as that, so this, by way of the elements, see it as empty. Do not come back to the world again. Having expunged the desire for existence, you will live at peace. So this is one of the stories, is the one who is infatuated with her own beauty of her own body, the love for one's own body. So then the second story that's offered is of somebody who's infatuated by the body of another. So there's these two aspects, and this set of teachings is powerful and effective, whether that tendency for sensual desire and infatuation is directed internally or externally. The second incident occurred while the Buddha was dwelling at Rajagaha, and it was regarding Sirima, the younger sister of Jivaka. Sirima was the daughter of a famous courtesan. And when her mother passed away, she assumed the position as the chief courtesan. She had an encounter with the Buddha where she disparaged or criticized someone, and then repented about that and apologized. She became a stream enterer, and she started providing 8 constant meals, meaning she would provide meals for 8 bhikkhus on a daily basis. So then later, she became ill, and the bhikkhus went to receive the alms food, and there was one young bhikkhu who fell in love with Sirima. Even though she was ill, even in her state of illness, he was in love. Not only beautiful, but a great cook, offering delicious food to the bhikkhus every day. Uh, the next day, after he saw her and fell in love, the very next day, she died. Then King Bimbisara went to the Buddha and reported what had happened. The Buddha told King Bimbisara to take the dead body to the cemetery, keep it there for 3 days without burying it, but protecting it from crows and vultures. The king did what he was told. Then on the 4th day, the dead body of the beautiful Sirima was no longer beautiful or desirable. It was bloated with maggots coming out of the 9 orifices. And then the Buddha took his bhikkhus to the cemetery to observe the body. The king also came to the cemetery with his men. The young bhikkhu who was so desperately in love with Sirima did not know that she had died. When he learned of it, he joined them, and he saw the corpse surrounded by the bhikkhus. The Buddha then asked the king to get the town crier to announce that Sirima is available to any man who could pay 1,000. But nobody wanted to pay to spend a night with the corpse, even though they were happy to pay that much in Morso to spend a night with her when she was alive. Then even less, 200, even paying 50, they wouldn't even pay anything. Not for free of charge. They were not willing to spend a night with the corpse of Sirima. Then the Buddha said to them, bhikkhus, look at Sirima. When she was living, there were many who were willing to give 1,000 to spend one night with her, but now none will take her, even if given without any payment. The body of a person is subject to deterioration and decay. Look at this dressed up body, a mass of sores supported by bones, sickly, subject of many thoughts of sensual desire. Indeed, the body is neither permanent nor enduring. So those are the two stories. When I first encountered these kinds of teachings, I had to overcome a certain amount of resentment because they always were presenting that it was the female form that was the trigger for craving and sensual desire, and they did not mention the male form. Even on many occasions, they taught bhikkhus to overcome sensual desire by contemplating the body of a woman. I mean, the decomposing corpse of a woman. And they would teach a woman to overcome desire by contemplating the decomposing corpse of a woman. So there's a certain bias, right, in the culture of the time. I'm not that worried about that now, but I do notice, and we're going to see this in this sutta when we read the verse of the Vijaya Sutta, that it's a lot about delusion and truth, seeing things incorrectly, versus seeing them truly as they actually are. And it's a kind of a magical irony or something, is that the Buddha conjured up a magic show. He conjured up a mirage in order to teach the bhikkhus how to see the body accurately as it really is. You see, that's ironic, huh? But this is the way it is, and how we can see that the poetry of literature sometimes has got a way of striking to the heart of the matter. So now I'm going to open the sutta. See how I'm going to do this. Okay, I'm going to open the sutta in the Sutta Central version, which, because it gives the Pali in English, it's easier for me to see both of them together. Views, line by line. Would Venerable Kachina be happy to read it, just one stanza at a time? And would you be happy to read it in English and Pali, making the Pali very beautiful?
Sure, I'll do my best. How's my sound? Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, your sound is good.
It is good. Okay. All right. Walking and standing, sitting and lying down, extending and contracting the limbs. These are the movements of the body. Charang waya diwati tang nisinno udawasayang saminjeti pasareti esa kaya sa injana.
The commentary has got quite a discourse about this paragraph, mentioning how changing among the different postures is related to different manifestations of the air element. So the air element is involved with the movement of the body. So lifting the body up is like increasing the amount of the air element, and letting the body come down is decreasing the movement of the body. Then he says that when you have the thought, let me stand, that is the origination of the air element. So then it's making a connection between the mind and body in terms of the intention or the thought. That's quite interesting. There's a joke that if you know me for a long time, you heard this before. This becomes from a professor of philosophy who said he's got the power to cause an object to move through his mind. He can move an object. And then the example is he says, hand go up, hand go down. And that's his statement that the mind has the power to cause objects to move. Next stanza.
Okay. Linked together by bones and sinews, plastered over with flesh and hide, and covered by the skin, the body is not seen as it is. Atinnaharu sangyutto tachamang sawalepano Chavya kayo patichano yatha bhutang nadisati.
Okay, now this is, I think, fascinating. If you refer to the asubha meditation in the Mahasatipatthana Sutta or in the Satipatthana Sutta, it just simply gives the list of the 32 parts of the body. Head, hairs, body hairs, nails, teeth, skin, flesh, sinews, bones, bone marrow, and so on. It doesn't distinguish the significance of the different groups of the parts of the body. In fact, it's almost like the training there is to treat them in a very equalized kind of a way, very neutral. In the Mahasatipatthana, it says it's if there's a bag open at both ends filled with different kinds of grains, such as rice, wheat, mung beans, peas, sesame, and ordinary rice. Then a person with clear eyes opens the bag and examines the contents and identifies the different kinds of grains that are in that bag of mixture. So the asubha, or that would mean impure, in that case is something that is a mixture of different elements. But that's not like inherently delightful or horrible. It just is what it is. But in this case, the first five, kesa, loma, naka, danta, ticho, the head hairs, the body hairs, the nails, the fingernails, the teeth, and the skin, those are the things that we fall in love with. Haven't you ever been young and fallen in love and saying, "Oh, what nice fingernails they have," and just being so, delightful with the hair, and delightful with, if it's a man, like the hair on their chest or something, or the hair on their body, and this poem here is giving those first set of things as being what is deceptive and hiding something within which is repulsive. Coming back to the third stanza, we'll go on. We'll just finish the repulsive bits. The next two stanzas together. Manuel?
All right. It's full of guts and belly, liver and bladder, heart and lungs, kidney and spleen. Antapuro udarapuro yakanapailasa watino hadayasa paphasasa wakasa bihakasa cha.
And the next one?
Spit and snot, sweat and fat, blood and synovial fluid, bile and grease. Zinghanikaya kelasa sedasa chamedasa cha lohitasa lasikaya pitasa chawasaya cha.
So this is sort of a short version of the remaining of the 32 parts of the body that we find in the asubha meditation in the Satipatthana Sutta. It's listing, it's not exactly the same list, but it's a very similar list of things. Now, in this Sutta Nipata, it gives another way of looking at it. The next part, starting then in 9 streams, atasa is well, I'm going to go back a bit. I'm going to tell you what the commentary offers about these parts of the body, and that is that with the different postures, if you hold the body in a single posture for a long time, it becomes oppressive. And then it becomes painful, holding it in one posture, and that's the characteristic of suffering. And then when you change the posture, then you see the characteristic of impermanence, or you could see the characteristic of impermanence. And then when you see that the motion of the body is the combination of the factors, meaning the intention, the air element, and the change of the position of the body, that's seeing that the body in its different postures is merely arising as a result of causation, and that there's not a self in it. So then, the different parts of the body, the commentary refers to how they should be analyzed in the as it's given in the Visuddhimagga. So this is something actually that's relevant for us who are trying to meditate. And that is that one should, for each part of the body, analyze its color, shape, region, location, and delimitation. So, as for example, my hair is white, and it's long and thin. It's in the region of the head, and it's delimited by a small pocket of grease where the end of the hair is planted. And so one can analyze each of the parts of the body in that way, like the size, the shape, where it is, and what's around it. And then, and this is in the Visuddhimagga, they speak about a method of non-concern, which is that the hair doesn't know anything about the head, and the head doesn't know anything about the hair. So hair is not concerned with it. And these are just methods for basically arousing enough interest to continue looking and examining and inspecting the different parts of the body and becoming very objective about it. He also, in the Visuddhimagga, they talk about how ridiculous it is that we should be so much in love with the form of a beautiful person when the beauty, which is only skin deep, we just see the skin. And they say that the skin is as thin as the wings of a fly. If you collected all the skin from the entire body of a middle-sized person, it would be the size of a jujube fruit kernel. It's like falling in love with a layer of paint on a house and not realizing how insignificant the paint on the house is. But the skin is like a disguise. Why do we see things incorrectly in a distorted way? Why do we see something that's not really attractive as being attractive? Or why do we see something that's not really horrible as being horrible? Actually, my idea is that it's desire and craving which is really fueling the delusion. So, regarding the beauty of one's own body, if one is alive and you sort of assume that it's like the natural state of existence to be alive and to have a living body, and you like to be a living person. You like your existence. You want to continue your existence, and so it's because of this liking and wanting of our existence that then we see the miraculous aspect of how beautiful it is, the body, and how fantastic it is, all the different organs of the body, how they're all like doing their job in order to keep us alive and keep the existence going. So it's like how we see it is depending on where you're standing. If you're standing in a gutter, you see one thing, or if you're standing on top of a skyscraper, you see something else. And so where we stand, if we stand on that liking and wanting, or that existence, and then in some kind of a similar format, if we being a social animal, that we know how much affiliation or connection with others in that love, interpersonal, that connection, that love, how important that is to our very existence, and how you would almost feel like if you were separated and didn't have that connectivity with your dear friend, how it would almost be like dying. Even worse than physical death, worse than falling off a bicycle, would be to be hated by your friend, or to be, cursed at by your lover, or to be looked down upon with contempt by your mother or father. Is even much more painful than falling off a cliff, or falling out of a tree, or falling off a bicycle, because our very existence is related to that affiliation. So to the extent that we're from that place of needing and wanting, that then we see things as being beautiful. So that it's not that we are deluded about the beauty of the human form because it's covered with skin. We're deluded about the beauty of the human form because we need somebody in order to feel complete or whole, or something like that. Then coming to this next section, which is about the 9 kinds of substances that are flowing. And then in 9 streams, Venerable Kachayana?
Then in 9 streams, the filth is always flowing. There is muck from the eyes, wax from the ears, and snot from the nostrils. The mouth sometimes vomits bile and sometimes phlegm, and from the body, sweat and waste. Atasana wahisotehi asuchi sawati sabada Akimha akigutako. Kannamha kannagutako. Singhanika chanasato. Mukena wamate kada. Pitang simhancho wamati. Kayamha setajalika.
Yes. And so this is a different way of looking at the same subject, is how these repulsive things are flowing out. Atta, furthermore, the 9 openings are the 2 eyes, the 2 ears, the 2 nostrils, the mouth, the anus, and the urethra. The impurity flows. He mentions the eye filth from the eye and the ear filth from the ear, and then the snot from the nose, and then from the mouth sometimes comes vomit, which is made of bile, and sometimes it's phlegm, which is like, this is what I've got. I've got so sorry, so much phlegm. It's unbelievable. I know. I've started carrying a spittoon around because I've used up so many hankies taking the the phlegm out of my mouth that it's come easier just to spit it into a spittoon. So the poem doesn't mention urine and feces, but that's kind of like understood. And then in another way it mentions the sweat and dirt arising from the whole body. Then the next verse, you might know that in ancient times, they didn't seem to understand the function of brains in the thinking process. It just seemed to be some kind of a useless porridge that was filling up the skull. So the next verse.
Then there is the hollow head, all filled with brains, governed by ignorance. The fool thinks it's lovely. Atasa susirang sisang matalunga sapuritang supato nang manyati balo awijaya porakato.
Okay. So the brain is like a white gourd packed with curd in the Visuddhimagga. And then one who thinks of it as beautiful, we think that the head is so like important, just in terms of like a status or conceit. If you were in front of somebody who was senior to you, you would make sure that your head is lower than their head. Even though if you were tall and they were short, if they're senior to you, you would put your head down low. There's a wonderful picture I have of our teacher Bhante Gunaratana was having a meeting with Ajahn Pasano. Ajahn Pasano is quite tall. And Ajahn Pasano was so cute. He was like crouching and crouching and crouching to make himself smaller than Bhante Gunaratana, to keep his head lower. And just the same way also when we pay respect to the Triple Gem, we pay respect by putting our head down to the ground. So we do think that the head is there's something like really important about the head, and yet it's just a gourd filled with this disgusting porridge, eh? The uh, now the Buddha then continues with the contemplation, the charnel ground contemplation, the contemplation of the dead body. And you'll see when it comes to the end of it, it's like, as this is, so that is, as that is, so this is. So the body which is alive and the body which is dead, they're both bodies. And so like this is the contrast or the back and forth of the comparison that we're being taught to make is with our imagination, or if we have the actuality of seeing an actual dead body, corpse, and seeing an actual living body, and comparing the living body with the corpse, and making that comparison to recognizing the similarity. Even the body of a wheel-turning king is packed with all these kinds of filth. When they're lying dead, bereft of vitality, warmth, and consciousness, bloated, swelling up like a bellow full of air, discolored through the disappearance of color, cast off like a useless block of wood. And then the relatives come to be unconcerned. Okay, let's read this verse.
And when it lies dead, bloated and livid, discarded in a charnel ground, the relatives forget it. Yada somato seti utumato winilako apavito susanasmin anapekahontinyatayo.
The nyatayo are the relatives, and the anapekha is they're unconcerned and indifferent. In a way, this is sort of creeping into a little bit of a it's a pun, but it's I see something in this because we would like to develop for ourselves. When we're enlightened, we become disinterested in the phenomena that arise to our experience, the different contexts that we have, the different feelings, and so forth, that when we have no more clinging or craving whatsoever, then we are not concerned. We're not shaken. We're not disturbed. And when we are not disturbed because of that non-clinging, then we could be called the sage at peace. So I may be reading too much into it, but I thought there could be a way that the way the relatives lose interest in the body of their deceased relative. So the same way we could become disinterested, uninvolved with our own body. And then the next verse, Venerable Kachayana.
It's devoured by dogs, by jackals, wolves, and worms. It's devoured by crows and vultures and any other creatures there. Kadantinang suwana cha singala cha wakakimi kakagidcha cha kadanti ye chanye santipanino.
So the Santi are the beings, the Panino is breathing. So these are the beings who are breathing, the living beings. And Chanya is any others. This also, in one way, it's horrible, and in one way, it's kind of lovely. in the cycle of life, to think that this body can become food for other creatures to consume, to go back to nature, that like the dead warrior becomes compost, and the compost becomes a flower. And so then there's that kind of that transformation. And it's even occurs to me that there could be something that is a little bit sick that could happen in some cultures where they didn't want the body to decompose. If they would mummify the body and put it into a tomb in which the body could exist for 3,000 or 4,000 years, and still the dogs and worms didn't get a chance to devour it because it had been mummified, because somebody had some kind of like a belief about keeping the physical body separated like that, as because of some kind of anxiety feeling or some kind of belief they had about the afterlife. But as far as I know, I think in Indian culture, if they didn't have the sky burial, or the type of burial where the animals would just eat the food, the corpses, that it could be that they would be cremated and given back to nature, or it could be that they would be simply, without being preserved or in any way, that they would just be buried and quickly decompose and rot and go back to nature. These last few verses then are coming to the wisdom. First, as I understand from the commentary, the next two are the wisdom of the trainee. If you'd like to read those two, the wise mendicant.
Wise mendicant here, having heard.
Uh-oh. We're losing the connection.
Losing the connection.
There, you're back now.
I'm back now? Okay. As this is, so is that. As that is, so is this. They'd reject desire for the body, inside and out. Sudwana bodha vachanang bhikkhu panyana wa ita so konang parijanati yatha bhutan hipassati yatha idang tatha etang yatha etang tatha idang achattancha bahidhacha kaye chandang virajaye.
So, hearing the Buddha Vachana, the Buddha's words, that's a condition for stream entry. The bhikkhu, ida, here, this is like here in this world. The commentary remarks that this is particularly addressing to the bhikkhu who had been fallen in love with Sirima, as well as including the two bhikkhuni Nanda. So they're both included in this lesson. And then fully understanding that parijanati, this is yatha bhuta, seeing it as become. This is the awakening of that Dhamma I. Pajanati in the teaching about the Four Noble Truths, it says that the truth of dukkha should be fully understood, and that's used the expression pajanati, which, in my opinion, is almost the same as parijanati. It's just they needed an extra syllable to make the meter in this case. So this is the kind of initial opening of the wisdom of getting hold of the First Noble Truth, seeing our existence as it has come to be, yatha bhuta. And then as this is, so is that. That's referring, according to the commentary, that's comparing the living body and the dead body. The living body like the dead body like the living body. And then because of that, they reject the desire for the body, that's the kaya chanda. And they vi raja. So raja is like the lust or delight, and vi raja is being separated from that. And then the inside and out is referring, inside is referring to one's own body, and then outside is referring to the desire for another's body. And I know I've gone a long time without giving people a chance to ask questions, but I think we might as well go through the rest of this verse, and then we'll have the discussion. Then the next stage is discussing, now you've gone from the trainee to the fully enlightened arhat in this next part, the wise mendicant here. So you can read that part.
That wise mendicant here, rid of desire and lust, has found the deathless peace, extinguishment, the imperishable state. Chandaraga viratoso bhikkhupanyana vaita achaga amatang santing nibbanang padamachutang.
So machu is death. Padamachutam is the deathless state. Then the last two verses, it's almost like the whole poem is finished there, and then the last two verses are sort of like a recap of the whole poem. Seeing it as it actually is described in the commentary as seeing it not just in terms of dukkha, but in terms of the three marks, seeing it in terms of impermanence, dukkha, and anatta, selflessness. So having discussed the meditation subject to the unattractive body by way of both the sentient, living, and the insentient dead body together with its outcome, the Buddha then speaks this last pair of verses that's coming up, using a concise teaching to criticize the heedlessness that prevents one from obtaining such a great benefit. The two-footed body is a very, according to the commentary, it seems like it's kind of an insulting way to refer to a human being. It's almost like comparing a human with a side of beef as a four-footed body, or as something else that would be taken as food. And then So he sort of insults the body and then points out in this ironic way, that it's still cherished, and that one should not exalt oneself because of it. So I'll come to the next last two verses.
This two-legged body is dirty and stinking, full of different carcasses and oozing all over the place, but still is cherished. And if on account of such a body someone prides themselves or looks down on others, what is that but a failure to see? Dvipadakoyang asuchi, dukhanto parihirati, nana kunapaparipuro, visavanto tato tato, etadisena kayena, yomanye unnametawe, parangwa awajaneya, kimanatra adasanati.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Two.
I would like to welcome any comments or questions about this sutta, and if the sutta seems very clear to you and you don't have any questions about it, I would like to hear your report about what benefit you've experienced, how it helps your own personal practice to do this kind of contemplation. Okay, Damon.
Thank you. This is wonderful. I think what's implied but's not explicit in this sutta is, and I would expect you to agree that notwithstanding this disgusting body, it nonetheless, when used as a vessel or a tool or a means to achieve our liberation, thus we're compelled to pay some, hopefully minor attention to its well-being, so we can keep going on the path. Thank you.
Yes, that's a good point. In particular, in terms of the middle way, the Buddha rejected mortification of the body. And also, in terms of psychological process, sometimes like some kind of very unskillful thought or emotional reaction or something can come up to us, and it may come about like even like during meditation, that something comes up that's painful and unskillful. And if I always adopted the policy that in meditation, I should not go looking for trouble. The trouble will come anyway. The trouble will come by itself because of the nature of causes and conditions. And so then when when some kind of unwholesome or negative thought comes in, then one should fully understand it. And if we recognize that it's unskillful, one should abandon it and let it go. And if you don't know how to let it go, find out how to let it go. But if a thought comes in that's wholesome and beneficial, that it's okay to think that kind of beneficial and wholesome thought again and again. until the wholesome thought becomes very habitual. The only caveat being that in gaining samadhi, or the tranquility concentrated meditation, eventually even those skillful thoughts are too agitated, too much agitation, and then you want to just come to peace, come to quietude, and stop thinking. So the Buddha is not counseling us to just be like a professional do-gooder who's always like spending the whole day, morning to night, thinking, may all beings be well, and something like that, and never coming to silence. You want to, don't be afraid of those skillful thoughts. Now, I'm coming to a parallel to the body. Then if there's a way, things that we can do which are beneficial to the body, like, for example, keeping clean, brushing the teeth, getting enough exercise, and avoiding abusing the body with intoxicants, and definitely avoiding torturing the body with any kind of a self-injury like that. So those kinds of behaviors are perfectly okay to do, and okay to do them again and again. If you brush your teeth and you see that's a good thing, you can brush your teeth again and again, but not like day in and day out, but after each meal. So then this is a way in which the middle way is applied to not seeking to cause bodily pain by doing things that are harmful to the body. In the end, whatever care we take for the body, in the end it won't work. So, and in the end, it fails in the end. So, this is it's sort of like the mystery of the occupation of a physician, is that their, goal is to relieve the bodily suffering from illness, and to enable people to not be killed because of illness, and yet, no matter how good or how skillful the physician is, 100% of their patients die. So that's a kind of a koan. Okay, Maureen. You're muted.
I wanted to go back to the very beginning, where you said at least one of the girls, the beautiful girls, was forced to go into the Sangha. I mean, I didn't think you were allowed to do that.
It could, no, I think it definitely can happen and does happen. If you had a young girl who was married at a young age, like 12 or 13 years old, she's forced by the family to get married, and then the husband dies, and even if the marriage wasn't consummated, you have like this young teenager with their whole life ahead of them, but in some circumstances it's considered that they're no good, that another man would not want to marry her because she's already a widow at age 14. And it's a very desperate and tragic kind of circumstance. And it was for that reason that sometimes they would put those young girls into the bhikkhuni form. And likewise, in modern times, when the family is extremely poor, uh, they don't have access to education to learn how to read and write. And so the families would make the children to become novices because then they could get some schooling. And it was kind of expected that if they don't like the monastic form, they could disrobe later on and go into lay life. But if they like the monastic form, they could stay in the monastic form. Okay, I see Aranya Bodhi and then Richard.
Hi, Ayasobana, it's Kim.
Hi,
Nice
Kim.
to see you. My question, little delay. My question is that there's so much like talk about how disgusting the things that are inside our body and that come out of our body are, and beautiful on the outside. And we're supposed to think of the body as the disgusting inside. But couldn't we also easily say, like, this inside of our body is a beautiful machine or technology that we have that allows our consciousness to participate in this experience?
Yes, we could see it that way. In fact, I see it that way, that the human being or any kind of animal that exists in the world is an exquisite result of millions of years of evolution, such that these humans or these other animals are able to live within their ecological niche, that they're able to have a complete life and reproduce and carry on the species and that which the qualities that we have, being that humans and a few other creatures have a lot of like self-awareness or self-consciousness, and so then we might experience like those qualities that we have that enable the process of life are beautiful and wonderful. You know, like the birth of the baby is like so beautiful and so wonderful, even though it's an agony and it's horrible. And but at the same time, it's like culturally, it's pictured as being something that's beautiful and lovely and full of love. So I don't. My present attitude is that it's neither pleasant nor unpleasant. It is what it is. The body is doing what it does, which enables it to continue living for a certain number of years of its lifespan. I'm coming up to my 75th birthday, and according to the charts, my life expectancy is, as an American woman, is 11 more years after this. So, you know, like the body is just doing. It's just doing a thing. It's not good, bad, or indifferent. It just is doing what it does. It's only because of feelings and emotions that these things seem beautiful or ugly. So when there was a verse about, elsewhere there's a meditation about how horrible it is that a human being has to be inside of the belly of a woman, which is a disgusting, horrible, smelly, stinky, nasty place for 9 months. They have to suffer being inside a woman. Ah. and, and to me, it's like, you know, well, it's beautiful because mother loves me. and wants me to live. She has got such unconditional love and such willingness to give and to sacrifice all the pains and so on in order to facilitate my life. And just the same way, like at the end of my mother's life, when my mother was dying, and I had the blessing, the privilege to be able to take care of her, and I was able to, wipe my mother's bottom and clean her diapers. And so there was nothing disgusting in that at all. It was beautiful, because I felt the love and the privilege of the opportunity to pay back. But all of these things, like pleasant, unpleasant, delightful, not delightful, and so on, it's all just kind of like tied up in the process of life, and I don't need to make it more than it is or make it less than it is. But a person who is clinging to life and their greed for life is actually causing the perpetuation of dukkha. They've got to break it. And these kind of teachings are designed as skillful means to help a person wake up and smell the coffee and realize that this process of life and all it seems to be, and if we're driven by the lust for life, we got to find a way to break it.
Thank you.
Richard.
Thank you, Aya. I hope you get better. This idea about the bhikkhuni, the person being forced to join the bhikkhuni order. In Asian Buddhist cultures, this is a fairly common practice in the ancient days. When I was studying Zen 40 years ago in my 20s, my Zen master came from a family of, they had too many sons and there wasn't enough land. They were farmers. There wasn't enough land to inherit. So he was sent off to join the Buddhist monastery on the other side of the country. As a matter of fact, they sent him quite a distance away. And he went on to become a very famous Zen master. So also many ancient Buddhist societies, the children who were orphaned, or parents, or like the similar case, they just couldn't take care of so many children, they would send them to the temple. And the temples were like schools, and they would get, I think you kind of touched on this, they would get educated. So even if they didn't stay on, very few people in the ancient world knew how to read and write. They would get very good positions in society because of that kind of knowledge, and other things that they would learn there. And that only changed recently, even in countries like Thailand and everything. The temples were the main places where all the children went to get education, and things like that. But things are becoming more, what you call like government controlled, secularized, nowadays. So whether or not, that's a true story or not, about that particular bhikkhuni, doesn't matter, but it is a cultural thing that's gone on for a long time. And it was of great benefit to many, many children that really didn't have any other way to survive and make a place for themselves in the world. Also, there was a mention early on, I'm trying to remember if I remember it correctly, about when Buddha went back to visit his family, and there was right away there was some bhikkhunis or something. I think this is just a slight error in the commentary, and because when he went back the second time and his father died, it was after that his mother, his foster mother, asked to become a bhikkhuni, and with several hundred other women. And the reason they had so many women at that point wanting to do it is because the Buddha had collected so many of the men. He had already collected several hundred over those years and taken them away, right? So over time, these were a lot of what would be considered widows and everything, and others. I'm sure they weren't the only ones, but. And as a side note, I'd never really heard it talked about, but at a later point in time, Buddha's clan, the Shakyans, were overcome by other groups outside and kind of disappeared in a sense. And that's because the cream of the crop of all the men, the leaders and everything, went off and became bhikkhus. And so the remaining men weren't knowledgeable enough and sufficient enough to really hold the clan together. And it actually made them a little vulnerable to outside forces, to conquer them, because, all their leaders and everything, a lot of them went off to become, bhikkhus or the sons of the families. And then the fathers died off and they had no one to inherit and everything. So it caused a little bit of the disintegration of the society in the sense that the Sakyans couldn't maintain themselves after that as an independent clan. They became part of some other group. Who's the king? It's not Bimbisara, it's the other one. I think his name begins with a P or something. There's a reference in some sutta where they're talking about the Sakyans as being part of his kingdom, because I think his was the kingdom that ended up, taking over the Sakyans, and like that. Anyways, philosophically, though, this section here, where it talks about the head, Bhikkhu Bodhi's work, it's translated as, then its hollow head is filled with brain, led by ignorance. The fool conceives it as beautiful. And I think what's being said here is that, it's like, what, do you have a hollow head or something? You know what I mean? Do you have no brain? So you think this way. The translation here is a little strange if you look at the Pali. So what I'm saying is, I think the real translation was, hey, do you have a hollow head with no brains or something? And you think this is beautiful. I think it's kind of a play on a funny kind of a joke, sort of, in a way, in the language. So it's like, if you have a hollow head, you're going to think, right, you got no brain. So this body is like a beautiful thing. Anyways, that's all I wanted to say. So thank you very much. Oh, I think you're muted.
I'm going to let Damon and then Maureen have the last two words. Please go ahead, Damon.
Yeah, just I want to just quickly share a comment from, I guess it's an Ajahn Sujata, who commented on this aspect about the brains. He says that while it may seem to us that many have hollow heads without brains, the real function of the brain was not appreciated in ancient India. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Maureen?
I was just remembering, I don't know, when did Hindu culture have wives throw themselves on the funeral pyre of their husbands? Because that'd be a good reason for joining the bhikkhunis, to avoid burning to death. Yeah.
As far as I know, that pattern evolved several hundred years after the Buddha's lifetime. And it was actually some of the rules that the bhikkhunis have is putting the bhikkhuni order under the protection of the bhikkhu order to protect us from being declared illegal by the government. That to have an independent bhikkhuni order was became like not acceptable, and so that dependency under the bhikkhus became stronger, but not to punish the bhikkhunis, but to protect them from the law. Okay.
I also hope that you feel a lot better. You've been like this for several weeks now.
Yes, I acquired this on the 26th. I acquired it on the 1st of November, and I'm counting the days. I've heard of people who had something like this for 3 months. And I'm going in for another further testing on Monday. So I hope it'll work. Okay, we'll pay respects to the Triple Gem. Araham Samma Sambuddha Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivademi Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammam Namasami Supatipanno Bhagavato Savakasango Sangham Namami.
Thank you, Aya.